Good evening, everyone. I'll just give it a couple of moments to let all the attendees come rushing through to the webinar. Right, so I'll crack straight on because we've got quite a lot to cover this evening. I want to get quickly onto the good stuff and the good presenters. So first of all, for those that don't know me, I'm Natalie Weir, British Orienteering Development Officer, but I'm also alongside that an Orienteering Level 1 coach and an Athletics Level 2 coach. So I'm passionate about kind of innovating and inspiring and learning about what we can do as coaches. And one of those key things that came up, and hopefully everyone can see my PowerPoint, is how we can use virtual platforms for coaching. So this session, it will be about an hour and 15 minutes, and we will explore the ways we can use virtual tools and apps to support our coaching. So, I mean, setting the scene, we all know the situation we're in. It's in one of those strange, unprecedented positions where almost traditional orienteering has been frozen with various restrictions in the UK and the various home countries. Whilst at the same time, obviously, we know the benefits of keeping active, and alongside that, as coaches, we want to make sure that we're kind of embracing any new ways we can keep connecting with our athletes and our members over this time. So throughout this my session and all the other speakers, whilst everyone that's listening can't talk to us, what you can do is ask questions if you want to, and there's a kind of a chat box and a question area, you can type it away, and then what we'll try and do throughout the sessions is to answer those questions as they go along. So let's just quickly touch base on why we're looking at coaching virtually and why it can be an advantage. Well, firstly, as we know, one of the most important things, especially over this time, is connecting and keeping together and bringing groups together especially when we're under restrictions. And various virtual platforms allow us to do that. They also give us ways we can still manage, plan and get feedback from our athletes. So whether it's you bringing together a group of young people on a Zoom conference call to setting practical map run sessions that they can go out and complete in their own time, the possibilities are endless almost. So, you know, it does enable us to continue or even improve the contact mechanisms we're using with athletes and members. And some of the examples we'll go through during this session kind of show how the learning and some of the experiences that our coaches have had over the last kind of 10, 11 months have not just been good learning for now, but are things we can take into and evolve and roll over into our traditional coaching. And obviously the other plus side is there's lots of free to use accessible tools, you know, which is what we want. And some of those, obviously there are lots, but I'm just going to do a quick rundown of some of the, you know, most obvious that we can use as coaches. So you've got the first half of this session, when we go on to it, will be Lawrence and Ian talking about their experiences of using both Zoom and Google platforms. And also Lawrence will talk a bit more about using some of the tools like polls to engage, like Kahoot and Menti. So for those that haven't experienced those kind of things, that might be useful to you. Obviously, in terms of the wonders of the virtual GPS tools, there's, you know, in the running world, we know we can connect people and see what people have done with the Garmin Connect and Strava. There's probably many of you that use those, as well as more general communication apps and tools like Spond or WhatsApp. And then the kind of the latter half of this session will be kind of Jane from D, Martin and Lynn giving us some more practical examples of how they've used, for example, MapRun to set sessions and some examples of those. So that is how we can actually deliver still using the virtual platforms as coaches to set the sessions, but how we can practically make our athletes and encourage them to do that and still feedback. There's various ways we can still continue to share and connect and also collaborate and learn from the comfort of our own computers. And often in the busy lives that we lead, we don't have time to do that. The other thing I'd like to draw your attention to, obviously this is only a very small list. If you look at the bottom of the slide, you can see the website, the Orienteering website has a nice list of software, you know, from wind splits to condes to catching features, and links to other kind of virtual softwares that you can click onto and use as useful tools. So, you know, for me, it's important to give us all as coaches as much inspiration and examples as we can to how we can coach our way through this current time. I've spoken to clubs, for example, that have said, you know, our juniors haven't done anything for 6 months, and this is going to go on potentially for goodness knows how long before we're back to maybe traditional ways of coaching and delivering training sessions, or even when we do, we might be limited to numbers. So I think we've got to just embrace what it is, and try and use and utilize these other tools that we might have to kind of engage and keep our, you know, even from talented athletes to those that participate for a bit of fun, you know, there's coaching for everyone, and hopefully these platforms in this session will give us all examples of how some of our club coaches have done that. There's quite some good quotes here that I just want to touch on. So there's a good one from Don. Let me go back. I don't want to skip over Don. No one should worry about the juniors' ability to deal with the tech. They had no issues. Obviously, the same could not be said of all the coaches, but I guess hopefully we've come on leaps and bounds, or Don believes so. So I thought that was quite a fun thing. And they used Zoom to deliver some of the J. Ross camps last summer. Also, Richard Leckie-Thompson, one of the lead coaches for that, also said there's a few top tips that he passed on, which I thought were quite useful. So just have a read down of some of these. Don't try to say too much when you're doing, you know, a Zoom session or a Google session, or setting things. Especially, we know from a concentration perspective, some of the athletes' main feedback that Richard found was that they would like longer breaks. So if you are doing kind of those virtual sessions online, computer to computer, make sure you kind of tie in some breaks time. And then he talked a bit about some of the best things that they did, which they wouldn't necessarily do at a live camp. There was a planning segment which allowed the athletes to try their hand at planning. And actually some outstanding courses were produced. And then one of the last things he said, which I thought was really helpful, was that it actually taught the coaches to appreciate that actually, why not deliver some of the skills or elements or technical bits you're trying to coach, deliver them virtually before you do a practical session. So that's even, you know, when time goes on and we can go back to our normal club nights, for example, and you're teaching and coaching a skill, why not have a virtual bolt on before that, giving people a chance to digest and understand the skill and practice it before. So it's, you know, how we can adapt and evolve, and I think that's a really good point. And then last thing on this slide is thinking about just, I think, you know, thinking outside of the box, or what other free virtual tools we've got. And he used the example of the Spond app that they've used to streamline communications between coaches and athletes. Obviously, a lot of people in my club use WhatsApp, and we have various, you know, group sections that we use. So it's just about, you know, thinking about what you can do or how you can improve what you currently do. Takeaway messages. I like this from Pete, who said that we've realised that in our huge region, these sessions add something in between our regular training that should carry on even when things return to normal. So the last thing I will say before I pass on to more excited people is, don't be afraid to learn, explore and try these new things, and then see how you can apply and adapt it to your traditional coaching, and hopefully it'll be an asset that you can take away, and at least we can take out of this spell something positive that we have learnt, and that's something we continue to do, I think, and evolve as coaches. So now the exciting bit, we've got obviously an action-packed session. We're probably going to be about another hour or so. We'll try and keep to time if we can. And as I say, during these sessions, please do ask questions, pop them in the chat boxes. And what I'll do is try and crop up and ask the speakers, you know, if you've got any particular questions about their sessions. So as I say, the first session is Lawrence from Southern Navigators. And he will basically talk us through how the South Central Orienteering Association have engaged juniors by using Zoom and give us some handy tips on kind of the Kahoot and Mendy and polls and engaging juniors. So what I'll do is just hand over to Lawrence. Bear with us a second. He's there, yay! Good evening, Lawrence. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you. It's very kind to let me talk. Hopefully you can hear me and you can see me on the screen. Good. It's very kind of you to let me share a few minutes of my experiences of virtual training. As Natalie said, we've got the South Central Junior Squad. So we've got juniors aged 11 to 18. And of course, like many junior squads, the aim of our squad and the training is to make sure juniors enjoy their broad orienteering experience and they have opportunities to learn, develop and improve. And of course, prior to lockdown, we would train regularly in our regional forests and areas. We'd have weekends away. We'd have day training, evening training, half-day training, and travelled annually to the annual week, the junior weekend, the church they call it, of individual races and relay races. So with lockdown, of course, like many of us, we've been forced into the virtual world, the virtual training world. So I thought I'm going to share just some of my thoughts on the opportunities, as I like to think of it, posed by virtual training. And I get that many of us on this call we've become experts, more expert than me in the last 12 months on the virtual world. I think 12 months ago I'd never heard of Zoom, and I'm sure many of you had not heard of Zoom either. So just what I wanted to do in these few minutes that Natalie's kindly given me is just to share my best 5 things that I've learned in the virtual training world. It kind of, and I think of it maybe as a summary of my virtual training toolkit. And it's a toolkit useful for, a really important thing for us for training the juniors is that our training, whether it's virtual or live in the forest, it has to be engaging and interactive. That's a common thing for our training. So yeah, my 5 things. So hopefully, I was already presenting. Oh dear. Hopefully, I'm going to show you a slide now. So the first one I wanted to share, my first tip, is the whiteboard. So this is an example of us on Zoom. So Zoom is a common platform. I'm sure you all use it. The whiteboard, number one, first tip. The whiteboard, I think this is a great thing for engaging and interactive training. So many of our juniors will be quite shy. Some of them will never want to turn their cameras on. Some of them will be quite keen to turn their cameras on and to talk and to come on and chat, which is great. Just on Zoom, if you put up the whiteboard, it allows what you can do is pose them a question. How are you feeling today? How are you feeling about your last race? Are you feeling fit? Let's just all write some thoughts on the screen. So clicking on the whiteboard on Zoom will put up a blank screen and will allow any participant in the training to type their thoughts, type their feelings, or even they can free write it or type it. Lots of options. There's a kind of a clear board just to put down some words and expressions, and it doesn't tie it to a junior, so you can use it to engage the audience for the next 5-10 minutes on how they're feeling. A good check-in. Of course, you can use your pencil and paper. That's a great one. They can hold up what they've written, but whiteboard is probably my first tip. The second one is photo sharing. So we can share our photos. So hopefully there is a nice photo up on the screen of a map. So we can share maps. Well, it's quite obvious, but it's number 2 in my toolkit. Being able to share maps is such an amazing thing. We can put up maps, and with the juniors, we can gently talk about the courses that they've done. We can spend a whole session talking about the course. We can talk about their learning experiences. We can talk about their observations. In a recent session, I got some map simplification. I asked them to look at leg 4 to 5 on the map you can see and just draw on their pen and paper a simplified version of that map. There's many things you can do on this photo sharing. Tip number 3, and I've got 5 of them as a reminder, so there's tip number 3, we can draw. So we can draw on the screen. There's a little icon on Zoom, the little pen, that if you click on it, it enables any of the participants to take their finger and to draw it across the screen. They can draw routes on the screen. They can scribble some words. They can circle things. We can ask them to, you know, who can spot the thicket? Who can spot this on the map? Who can spot that? From the basic to the more advanced questions. So it's a brilliant thing that you can draw routes and discuss routes, and great way to engage your audience. I'm sure this is quite obvious for some, but I just think it's quite useful just to share this, to have it all kind of in one place.
Someone just said, Lawrence, Nicholas just asked, can you show us where the pen is on that slide that you had before, or can you see where the pen is?
So no, you couldn't on that one. So I took a screenshot of that. It's a typical question. It's pretty much on the bottom left of a Zoom presentation. When you're in Zoom, and if we're in Zoom, I can show you, but it's kind of there. So happy to do a demonstration after in Zoom if anyone wants.
Well, and just one, whilst I've got you, just one quick one from Pauline said,
yeah.
On the whiteboard, do you know if you can use the whiteboard in the breakout rooms? So if you set people into breakout?
Yeah, I believe you can. Yes. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Good questions. Number 4, tip number 4 in my toolkit: polls. Gathering the views of the audience. So you've got two tools if you want to use a tool. Kahoot is a great one, and I think other presentations you've had a demonstration on that. This is an example of a Kahoot slide. You can prepare a lot of questions in advance, so participants will click on what they think the answer is, and it will add up how many people have got right, and at the end of it, it'll say who's winning, who's won, who's got the most, who's got the least. So it's a great learning experience, and junior participants will be well used to this, I believe. I think a lot of schools use it. The other one is Menti, menti.com, MENTI. So this is more corporate there, so you don't get too much for free, but you can do a bit like this Kahoot. You ask some questions, but you can also ask free-form questions. So you can produce cloud words. So I could ask you, the audience, how are you feeling today? Give one word to describe your feeling, and you log in on your phone, on your side device, and menti.com. I give you a 6-digit code. You put the question up. You type in how you're feeling, maybe, and then all of a sudden in my presentation, your words would pop up, and so you'd have this. It's a great check-in. Or how was that last training? Oh, difficult. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I'm up for it. So that's a few polls. Now, personally, I think polls, these organised Kahoot Menti polls, really, they're good if you're happy to really be organised to start with, and it's a big audience. I sometimes just do a whiteboard poll, or just look, how are you feeling? Just hands up, that kind of thing. Then just my final tip before I hand over is just the chat box. There is a chat box in most virtual presentations, but we've got one. We've asked some questions. The Zoom has a great chat box, and I think it's really, some juniors will be quiet on the. They don't want to have their camera on. They don't even want to say too much. That's fine. We can all be a bit like that. Have days like that. The chat box, just reminding them that there's a chat box, there's an emoji box. It just allows them to keep their views and keep answering the questions, and maybe pick up on a point on a question you've just had. And as doing the training with the juniors, I do like to just note and recognise. Oh yeah, good one. I'll say, good one, David. Yeah, you're right. There was a gully near that depression that we just saw. It comes at a nice pace that as a presenter you can engage with your current audience, and also look at what's popping up in the chat box, just to recognize that they're there, to make them feel as though for everyone it's an interactive and engaging session. So there we go. They're my 5 thoughts, and I'm going to hand back to Natalie. Thank you.
Yeah, that was fab, Lauren. Thank you. Just a couple of knowledgeable Zoomers have come on. So Angela says that to answer the question about the pen, annotate is either under view options on Zoom, or on the bottom left, like Lawrence said. And someone else has said, Lorna said, do you need a touch screen to do the Zoom writing? I assume you can just use your pad, can you, on your laptop?
Yeah, I think so. I have to admit, I always use my iPad, but yeah, I'm sure there's other ways you can do it. Yeah, it's a good question.
And Tom says, what do you think about training being in one region, or are you quite all embracing and that anyone can join, or have you kept your stuff purely kind of regional?
Yeah, I mean we're a regional squad, so we have our training sessions, but yeah, I mean if there are wider opportunities, we should open it out. Yeah, we're sure more than happy to put some wider sessions on.
I mean, that's a very good question, to be honest, Tom, with virtual, because the opportunities are endless. We could join, why not join some of our junior squads together with sessions? And those are the kind of questions that we perhaps can be asking and talking to each other about. So that's fab. Thanks for that. And then the whiteboard, Liz has said, is that quite obvious to access?
Yeah, just up on the drop-down box. The when I showed, I think I showed in it just at the bottom, whiteboard. Tap on it, and it comes. Nice white screen, easy to navigate.
Yeah.
Really good tool for getting people to write and show their feelings.
Fab. And then there are also kind of YouTube videos that show demonstrations of Zoom as well, aren't there? So from a practical level, if you want to actually see more before you get, but my advice, and that would be the same with any of these sessions, is just do one and practice through. And if you do something with one other person and just get trying it, just experiment and learn and try as you go along. No, brilliant. Thanks, Lawrence. So without further ado, I shall pass on to Ian from Interlopers Orienteering Club, and he's going to give us his experience of running the virtual D-site training camp and some good stuff about the Google Suite. So if you switched off. So Lynn is obviously from Bassock, based up near in Aviemore. And she's going to talk to us about using MapRun F in urban, semi-urban areas, skills such as fine-tuning navigation. So over to you then, Lynn.
Okay, and I hope that my stuff works, but we'll just wait and see. Can everybody see the screen just now that I've got up? Natalie, can you let me know that you can see my PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay then. Right. First of all, just basically, I'm sure that many of you have been using MapRun for various things. I'm just going to go briefly through how we used it for our Tuesday = O sessions. Bit of background to Bassock. Bassock has a very small catchment area in terms of population numbers. There's about 10,000 people live in the valley, and our club is between 30 to 40 members. I'm not sure how many have rejoined this year. We've got a lot of competing outdoor activities for people's attention, so orienteering is just one thing that people do. It's very rare that orienteering is the only thing that people do. But over 10 years ago, one of our club members, Hilary Quick, established Tuesday = O, and we meet every Tuesday from 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. It doesn't matter if it's dark, light, chucking it down with rain, whatever. The only thing that stops us meeting is that the roads are a bit iffy for getting there. So this is what happens. We get between 10 and 20 people coming to our day O, and this year it happened, or sorry, last year it happened between July and September, because we're in lockdown up until mid-July. But with the Scottish Government regulations, we were allowed to meet, and we all stayed physically distanced in the car park areas. People were printing off their maps at home, and so there was no particular COVID problems. There was nothing out for them to touch except kites, and people were asked just to go to the kite and not to touch it. Darko attracts quite a few less. It's a particular bit that some people are attracted to and other people run as far away as possible from it. So we get far fewer people coming along. In October, when Darko starts, it's not too bad at the start of the month, but by the end of the month, we're going out in the full dark at 6:30. The area that was chosen for October Darko was Loch Var, and you can see the map section on the left there. Now, basically, our Choose Equals O coordinator just sources willing volunteers to plan some exercises. And the willing volunteers for October planned some exercises that were a little bit like navigation on steroids, I think you could say. If you're plunged into an area like that as your first Darko experience, having not done anything since early March, then it is a bit of a baptism of fire. And we actually had some people that came along, 1 or 2 people, and after the first session, they thought, no, I'm not coming back again. So I volunteered to plan November, and I wanted to use a kind of progressive load of sessions so that people will gain confidence with being out in the dark rather than just muddling their way through and hoping that they found something. So this was my aim in November. We already had some map run courses planned in our main urban settlement of Aviemore, which had been planned during the summer by one of the other club members and myself. They hadn't been very well used by the club athletes, and I wanted to encourage people to actually use MapRun and to actually see its potential, particularly when hopefully in the future we'll actually get to travel a little bit and you can go and use MapRun courses in this whole variety of areas. I also felt that the athletes weren't very confident at night, and with MapRun there were no markers out. They just were going to get their feedback from their phone or their watch, depending on which they were going to use. So it had to be starting off reasonably easy for them. So this was the progression. I decided to start in Aviemore. It's an urban area. It does have quite a few what I would call dark bits, a bit like Parkland, where there might be holiday chalets or there might be golf courses. I was then going to move on to areas where the street lights were a bit further apart, and so I planned some map runs in one of our village areas fairly close to Aviemore. And then I was going to take them into open areas to start with, before eventually into woodlands, so that they were slowly but surely becoming hopefully more confident and able to navigate in more technical areas. So let's look and see how that worked out. We started off in Aviemore South. You can see one of the courses. They had a choice of 3 courses to do. This was just one of the courses, and I tried to use some of the open areas so that people were still having to think about, how do I plan my route to the control? Will I have to use my compass for direction? At night time, it can be a little bit hard to get a picture, but usually they could think about a picture for their control sites and distance estimation as well. So the second half of that course did go slightly more into the more built up housing areas. We then moved to Aviemore North. Again, open areas where people were having to use the same techniques that they would use anyway, of plan, direction, picture and distance, and then a little bit more around the housing estates as well. We do have a couple of railways running through, so that always gives something interesting for the route choice bits to come in. We then moved down the valley, or up the valley I should say, to a small village called Kincraig. And you can see the start in the middle on the left-hand side there. Now, this course was planned for dark orienteering, for night orienteering. And it was to build up the confidence in areas where there are some street lights, but not all that many street lights. And they would start off going around the houses area, the scattered housing area, and eventually there's a little bit in here, up at the top right, a little bit of woodland. See how they got on, burst out of the housing area again into the open, rough open area. You can see there's good contour features in there, and then a couple of controls in the woodland to bring them back into the finish. Now, this was quite an interesting week because I had a new family come along. They hadn't come to the Aviemore ones at all, but they came along to here. They live fairly close by to here. They've got 2 children, aged 9 and 11, and so one went out with mum, one went out with dad. They were used to doing other outdoor activities. Being out in the dark didn't faze them at all. And on their first trial, they got round as far as number 8 here, and then they were able to just bail out and come back because we have a cut-off time for all the exercises to happen of 7:30. Interestingly enough, they went back out during the day to redo the first part of the course and to finish off the second half of the course as well. So that was an advantage of actually having a map run course for them to do. And then finally, we were back at the same area. If I just go back to the previous slide, you can see where the start was and finish was there. So we were just down a little bit further. And this time we started off one control in the woodland into the rough open area just to build up their confidence, but going around the other way to what they'd done the previous week and then into the woodland area. Now this woodland is a lovely little area, particularly in the winter time when there's no bracken. It's mainly birch woodland, a few conifers around. There are 1 or 2 cattle there, but they're very friendly. They sit and do absolutely nothing. And it's well bounded. It's a narrow little area by a road on one side and the main railway on the other side. So they can just bail out if things go topsy-turvy. To make it slightly harder as well, we took the paths off the map so that people actually had to navigate in the dark. And the family came back again and they did as far as number 6, and then they did 7, 11, 12. And back into the finish. So I think that was pretty good for people who hadn't done all that much orienteering. So what did we actually learn from this? Well, first of all, there were quite a lot of positives. It did get some people out and using MapRun and thinking, yeah, I can actually do this. I've got it on my phone now. It's quite easy to use. And the advantage of using a streetlight area to start with was that it was easier to help people if they were having any problems with getting the app on their phone and getting started. But in actual fact, nobody did. We'd issued them with a PDF of instructions as well beforehand, and everybody had got themselves sorted out. Yeah, we had the light bulb moments when they thought they were in the right place and then it was confirmed for them. And you could see them on the first time they were trying this. There were people jumping up and down when they got to their first control and actually found that they were in the right place. And it was confidence. A lot of them became much more confident with their night orienteering through actually saying, I know I'm in the right place, and they moved maybe a metre or 2 and they got a bleep. I don't think there were any problems with people getting bleeps. They all reported that they got round the courses okay. There were some other spin-offs from it. I mentioned the family went back to visit a course in daylight. Some people actually combined doing one of the other MapRun courses in Aviemore when they were doing their shopping. They had, as I mentioned, they had a choice of 3 courses when they were in Aviemore South and 3 courses in Aviemore North. So I thought, right, I'll go back and do a different one. And they did those in daylight. This point here, the M&W 70, who find NITO difficult, not just for vision side, but also going over the rough ground at night. They find that quite difficult. So they actually went out during the day, and then we were able to discuss what they did because they were able to send me a screenshot of their phone route and everything. So they had some learning coming from it as well, although they missed out on the social side of meeting other athletes as well. Everybody who came on the MapRun returned to forest orienteering in December. We then went to Lochans, where there are actually what we call night tubes out, which are just white tubes with a reflector strip on them, and people then progressed their orienteering. And I particularly enjoyed the part that I didn't have to put anything out or collect anything afterwards. Once I checked the MapRun pinning was all okay, then that was that, and it's still there for people to use at any time if they want to. But not everything was positive. We did have a low turnout, but in many ways for our Darko sessions, that's to be expected. But it was really good to see that people did come back and that they did continue to do the Forest O after that. I'm not sure if this was a particular problem. Because we've got so many wonderful areas to orienteer in BASOC, we have some people who have a complete blank when it comes to orienteering in urban areas, and so they didn't come to those bits, and they didn't actually come back to Forest O either. So, you know, I don't know if it was just the fact that people just weren't going to come along to the night orienteering or not. All the maps that I used, and I picked them particularly for this, is that they're very recent maps. They were well geo-referenced. The area that I used at Dunacton, where people went into the woodland area, the birch woodland area, it was checked in the winter time when there are no leaves on the trees. I haven't been there in summertime to see what it's like then. And anyway, the bracken's horrible then, so you probably wouldn't want to go into it then. And the thing is, there's so many map run courses available now for people in the Scottish Orienteering page that people could actually build up their own training through it once they've been introduced to it as well. So I'm now going to stop screen sharing, I hope. And
yeah, so I was just going to say, Lynn, that a few little questions come in. So from what you just mentioned about forest cover, someone's asked, did you find in your experience that map run worked sufficiently well, both in your forest areas and in your urban areas?
Yes, it did. But as I say, it was winter time, and from what I understand, it is a lot easier to pin the points in the winter time and to get a signal in the winter time. I did, when I was checking the points, I did try and check to see what the signal strength was, and it seemed to be pretty good in those areas. And I've since done a map run in a coniferous woodland, more of Alvey, and that seemed to work okay as well. The trees are not too dense. I haven't tried it in some of our denser areas though.
No, and is there any reason why you, Terry's asked, is any reason why you use MapRun rather than try and use Singlo or any other app for your exercises?
Because we seem to be mainly using MapRun in Scotland. And, you know, it's publicised through the Scottish Orienteering website as well, so you know, people can just, you know, I want it to be available for people, and we made sure that the areas that we're using MapRun in are public access. There's no problem with access. We can just leave it up and people can come and do them anytime.
No, that's great, and I love to see those practical examples, and I think you can really see there how sessions like that can increase people's confidence as well in what they're doing, especially with the night and the street lamps. So magical. So now we're going to try pinging over to Jane, and don't panic because I've got the presentation up as well on mine. So if Jane, I'm going to see if I can make you presenter again. And Lynn, thank you very much.
Okay, I'll just come off
your webcam, and then Jane, hopefully you'll be up in a moment, and then if not, I can put your presentation up. So if you could just pop your webcam and sound on, hopefully.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Hear you. And we can't miss out on your slides because they're really good, aren't they? So people need to see them.
Well, fingers crossed. Hold on a moment. Let's see if I can just minimize this, and hopefully this might work.
Yes, I can see your screen. So you just need to, start you. That's the beauty. Lovely. Yes, well done. I'll leave you to it. Pop up if you have any questions.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Natalie. Hi, everybody. I just wanted to talk a bit about what we've been doing in D-Side, what I've been doing in D-Side. The reason I got interested in virtual coaching is because D has quite a big footprint. And as you can see, we not only cover various counties, but we have the border with Wales to contend with, and we have had police patrolling down the middle of the road in Saltley at various times during lockdown. And we've also had different parts of the club in Tier 2 when other bits were in Tier 3 and vice versa. So essentially, that's made it very difficult for us to be able to put together any activities that have been accessible to everybody in the club. So I particularly was interested in trying to do something to help the people or the juniors in the Northwest Junior Squad, not only in D, but in our neighbours in Manchester and District, because again, because of tier restrictions and travel restrictions, they haven't been able to get to the lakes areas where there have been events going on, whereas we haven't been able to have events just around our area. So I decided that perhaps a good way to do this would be to set up some coaching sessions that the parents could do. In other words, they could act as coaches. So what I did was I set up an afternoon of 2 sessions to start with one exercise at a local park and then a couple of exercises at a country park that's about 20 minutes drive away. I wrote, as I normally would, a coaching session plan, including debrief questions, etc. And I sent those through to the parents in advance. We didn't have any markers or controls out in the terrain, and because the parks are open access, there was no need for us to worry about getting permissions. It was no different to me just picking up an old orienteering map and just going out for a run. All of the participants had GPS watches. One had to borrow his dad's, but they recorded their traces and then they sent them to me afterwards so that I could do some analysis and feedback, putting them onto QuickRoute. And finally, because the parents were coming and sometimes there was a mum and a dad, I also planned a green course so that they had something out of the session as well. So the first session was just in a small local park, and I did 3 sprint intervals where basically the 3 taking part could experience racing under, well, race or running under race pressure with being chased or chasing people. And of course, it's all about just doing the basics in a pressure situation. So I'm sure most of you would know how this type of session works, but basically you just get everybody set on the start line, designate the runners 1, 2, 3, runner 1 starts, then 10 seconds later, the next one. Later, the next one. Excuse me, my battery is just dying. Apologies.
This is brilliant. It's a classic demonstration of the pitfalls, some of the pitfalls of going virtual that Ian was highlighting earlier.
You're just being polite, Natalie. Sorry about that.
Not tip, plug your laptop in.
Anyway, so basically they race the first 3 controls, recovery jog to the next start triangle, then they switch their order, so runner 2 goes first this time, they race the next 3 controls, recovery jog, etc. One thing I did do was at the end of the warm-up, I asked the parents just to get the three people involved to sprint first, just so that they could judge whether the 10 seconds was because I didn't know all of the athletes taking part. So I asked them just to check that the 10 seconds was about right. And I gave the parents some debrief questions, and as I've noted, just asked them to watch the start interval times. So that seemed to work quite well. And then they went off to this is Eastham Country Park, just on the edge of the Wirral. And this is a very different area. So here it was an exercise to follow the line. So this was all about compass bearings, pacing, no kites out again. And hopefully you can see from the map that there are some contour features, but they're a bit vague. So it's a good exercise for interpreting contours in a vague area. The good thing about this area is that it's very runnable. It has areas, as you can see, of low visibility, but actually you can get through, so you can follow the straight line. The other advantage is that the area is really quite well bounded, so nowhere's more than about 300 meters. So there was from a road or something very obvious, so we weren't about to lose anybody. And just to make it really a tricky exercise, I just took all the paths off the map, and you can do that we use Condes in D for our planning, so you can do that in Condes, and I've checked, and you can do that in Purple Pen as well. So after the session, the GPS traces were sent to me, and I just imported those along with the JPEG of the map into QuickRoute and did the analysis that you can see on the screen. I'd rather spare the blushes of anybody who was doing the exercise, so that's my trace, nobody else's up there. And I sent the feedback through to the parents to pass on to the athletes themselves. So that was the first of the 2 exercises we did at Eastham. The second one, which Ian spoke about just now, was simplification. So this time round, the maps I sent in advance, the map that you can see on the right, which is the course map, and then I sent also, it's the blank sheet of paper with just the course printed on it. But I also sent them, as you can see in the bottom there, just an example of a simplified map from another area. So they could, if they hadn't done it before, they could get the gist of what it was about. And I did say that if they weren't so confident, they felt the need for a comfort blanket, they could put their map in their pockets. But I'm told they all put their map in their pocket, but they said they didn't use it. If there was time, they could repeat the exercise using somebody else's map. And as I mentioned, afterwards, again, we did the analysis with the GPS traces. So both those sessions, they said they enjoyed, and it was quite interesting actually to give some. The main feedback I was able to give was about their relocation skills and strategies for relocation. But then the third exercise was I wanted to do something for those 3 athletes, but also for our club members as well, on a real good TD5 area, which for us is one of our sand dune areas on the Sefton coast out at Formby. So there was no way I could send people out on an exercise there without them knowing that they were in the right place. So luckily, by this point, we had a map run. One of my club colleagues had done a map run score course, well, courses and a score course for this area. So what I was able to do was to use all the controls, the same start and finish, and all of the control points that Norma, my colleague, had set up. I had to do the exercise in a part 1 and a part 2, so I had to make sure that in between part 1 and part 2 they didn't go anywhere near the finish, because that would have caused a bit of a problem. And what the athletes did was they selected the score course option in map run. So the idea of this exercise is really about identifying an attack point outside the whited out area, then detailed compass work to get through into the control circle, and then reading and orienteering accurately into the control. So the way that I was able to do them, creating the white circles, you can do that in OCAD, but I'm not a mapper and not familiar with OCAD, but you can do that using the mask feature in Condes, and I've checked, and there's a whiteout feature in Purple Pen. So it's quite straightforward to do, although as you can see, it's a bit tricky to make perfect circles. So yeah, that one, unfortunately, we were all set and ready to go with that. And then we had the Cheshire went into tier 3 when Liverpool went back into tier 2. So I think some of my club colleagues over on the Wirral have had a go, but unfortunately the juniors haven't, because they're all over on this side of the river. So that was it.
Thank you very much, Jane. Sorry about that. You just froze on my screen. It wasn't. So we've had a few questions in. Let's just try and get them up for you. So did you ensure your activities that you put on? Someone's asked that exciting question.
Yeah, what I did was I registered them, as with all our coaching activities, I registered them as an activity on the BOF website.
Carol's asked, how old are your juniors?
The juniors involved were 15, 14 and 18.
Yeah, But those kind of sessions you can use, I would say, with all ages as well. And I think one of the things that comes out for me is the fact that MapRun and Usinglo and those other kind of apps is a really obvious way is to do the bearings and the compass work, because you can block out sections of the map. You can practice attack points with a little bit of fun work with the map. So what I will do is there's also a few really good handouts from Martin from SROC, because they're from South Ribble Orienteering Club, and they put on some socially distanced coaching for Northwest Junior Squad members and their parents. So Martin kindly shared some really good examples similar to Jane's of bearings and attack point work, and a couple of example maps. So what I'll do is now I'm going to hand over to Mark, but whilst Mark's talking, I'll put those handouts in the chat box so everyone can then click and see those other examples from Martin from SROC. So yeah, I don't think there's any other questions that have come in for you, Jane. So thank you very much, and I'll just hand over to Mark and make Mark the presenter. And Mark's going to give us a little bit of an introduction to the World of O Running Wild tool. So this is the platform that's there to kind of help facilitate looking at maps, thinking about route choice and leg planning. So yeah, over to you, Mark, if you're happy.
Thanks. Yeah, can you confirm that the slides have come on screen for me?
Yep.
Yep, brilliant. Okay, let's get started. Hopefully this will be brief and to the point and informative. So what is Running Wild? So primarily it's a route drawing tool. Okay, so it's online. You'll need the internet to ever get hold of it. I've put the link there that takes you to the front page of it. It's part of World of O's 3D rerun suite of software. The slides should be available afterwards. They'll come around with the recording of the presentations as well, so you don't need to write this stuff down. It's free, fantastic, as all the stuff that Jan Kochbach makes. It's free, so that's really good as well. If you want it, you can have it private, so you can just have it for your club or your regional squad, whatever it is, the group. But of course, you can have it publicly available as well. And because of that, there's actually already a large existing catalogue of Running Wild courses that you can go and freely use for yourselves. There's the option of drawing your route against the clock, so a little bit of time pressure there, a bit of competition. And afterwards, you can load up everyone else's routes, and it has the distances, and so you can do some analysis as well. Okay, so I think the best way of doing this is actually everyone has a little try. I'm just going to explain what's going to happen, a couple of slides, and then we're going to get started. So on the next slide, there'll be a couple of links. I've made short links, so you don't need to copy a really long link, and obviously you can't click because you're watching a seminar. And you'll end up at a web page that looks something like what you can see on the screen now. What you'll need to do is, in the box saying your name, well, you can obviously write your name or initials, anything like that, and then the password, and the password is on the will be on the next page as well. And then you click Start Running Wild. And what this will do, this will load up the Running Wild. It's going to take a little bit of time to load, maybe 5-10 seconds, longer than what you're expecting. You'll see the map at first, and in the top right corner it will say loading routes. That's purely because I've used maps that already have GPS on them. You don't have to do that. You could just use blank maps. You don't have to use previous events or anything, but that's just what I've done. Then once it's loaded, the screen will go completely blue. Now it will say click to start. And then when you click, you'll be faced with a leg. You'll be orientated up the screen. And what you do is you click on the map to draw your route. Each time you click, it will draw a straight line to that next location that you click. It's really important you can be accurate as you can, okay? Because it does the distance. So if you're cutting corners, it's going to make your route look quicker, or sorry, shorter than it actually is. And if you make a mistake, you have to go back the other way. When you click in the center of the circle, it will then change to the next leg. Okay, there's 8 legs for you to try, and I've put 2 courses just for afterwards, so we can demonstrate the difference between sprint and, well, sorry, urban and forest, because I think the way you use the tool is slightly different. So what we're going to do, we're going to have 5 minutes. I know we're pretty much already at the end of what we want to do. There's going to be a sprint course. So if your surname starts from A to M in the first half of the alphabet, you go to the link. You don't need to type in www. You don't need to type in HTTP : or anything like that. Just in the address bar of your web browser. And I'm going to say now, actually, if you're on a mobile or iPad or something like that, I don't know the functionality, okay? It's best on desktop with a mouse. You can give it a go, see what it is. But just in the address bar, type in the addresses. So it's shorturl.at / and then there's the 2 codes. So sprint course, surname A to M, and then middle course, those whose surname starts after N, and there's the 2 links there. I appreciate that looks confusing, but it's the second link, I believe, is LCI. I need to check that, actually. I'll go and check that in case that doesn't work. The passwords are capital letters BOF 2021. So if you can load up your browser, type in those URLs for yours. I'm just going to quickly check. I didn't appreciate that it was such an ambiguous link for the second one. And you have 5 minutes. So at 10:02, we're all going to come back and then we're going to discuss it, and I'll go through some things afterwards. Okay, I'm just going to check link as well now.
Yeah, and then if you could potentially copy and paste them, Mark, into the chat.
Yeah. I'll just copy and paste, actually. Well, actually, I can just copy and paste the main link. Okay, I'll just do that. So, chat, here we go. So, I'm not getting the option to send to everyone.
I think you should be able to send it to me, and then I'll send it to the audience.
You got that coming up, yeah?
Yep.
Cool.
Right, I've sent it to everyone. So if it's easy to have a click on that.
So yeah, there should be 2 links, one with middle, one for the sprint, and you'll see the title when you go onto the page as well. It will either say middle or sprint.
Just remind us what the password is again. BOF 2021.
It's capital letters BOF 2021. BOF 2021. All caps. When you get to the end, so there's 8 controls. You're not doing the whole course. There's just 8 controls, so it shouldn't take too long. It should be quite intuitive, the clicking. Hopefully there's enough people that we at least get some reach on. If you can't get it to work, if you're on a device which isn't compatible, I do apologize. But this is just the purposes of demonstration. To be honest, as long as we get one person who manages to log on and get a root, then I'll have something to talk about when we come back. I reckon there might already be some roots coming in. So just a couple more minutes. No one's asking any questions, it seems, so I think that's a good sign that people have managed to get on.
apart from a few people being told it's a malicious site or cannot try because they can't get a connection because we've got a record number of orienteering coaches trying to log on at once.
Yeah, I mean, I've never sent over 100 people to the site at once. It's
don't worry, you can go and have a play. You can go and have a play afterwards. It's no problem.
Yeah. It's been out for at least 5 years, if not 10 years, but it's still in beta version at the moment. I imagine it always will be. That's just the curse of free software. You get what you pay for, and we've paid for nothing. My bandwidth is certainly struggling as well.
That's all right. Could you just send me those the short URLs if you've got them on your PowerPoint? Yeah. I'll send them through to everyone again. He's telling a few people to be patient. That's like a few of us with our Wi-Fi connections, isn't it?
So I've just put the two links there.
Yeah. I'm sending the short URLs as well in the chat box to everyone. Just so you've got them there handy. The other thing as well is you should be able to access in your handout areas the two example maps that I mentioned from SROC and similar to Jane's example from D about masking out around controls. So do have access to that. The other useful thing while we're waiting for people to continue playing that I've uploaded in the handouts and will obviously send around with the content as well is a really good example of a report on Zoom using Zoom from Pete Malafant at Bock, and it gives some really good suggestions of content ideas for your Zoom sessions as well. So do have a look at that because I think that's really useful as well and passes on good experiences. But yeah, Mark, carry on. What do we do now?
Yeah, if anyone has actually successfully managed to log on, do a running wild, draw their route, and save it, could you write that in questions? Oh, sorry, yeah, write it in the chat just so we can see if anyone actually is able to do it. If we've overloaded, the system, which is quite plausible. If we had done that, then that's fine. I can just carry on with examples. But if anyone's managed to do it, put that in chat just so we can see. Ian Enrich says taking a long time to load.
Someone's just doing number 3. Someone else says they've now got a map. A few people are still being told to be patient. And someone, David, well done, David, he's done to 8 already. But yeah, a few people having issues loading it.
It's obvious it's not used to handling this many people at once. So that's, well, at least we've found its limit. In the interest of time, I'm just going to refresh the pages. At the moment, okay, the sprint, we've got 6. So what we're going to do, obviously people have got things and lives to get back to, so we're going to just continue, and you can have a little play in your own time, either through the links that have been sent around in chat. They'll also be in the presentation, or you can just try any of the freely open public courses that are on there. It is very intuitive. Once it loads in, and it will be quicker. I can guarantee it will be quicker than what it was for when everyone's trying just now. So hopefully some of you have seen what it actually is. Let's discuss what it can be used for. So my slides back on screen, just confirm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So games using the clock Pac-Man mode. So when you're drawing, it draws your line, and then there's a little Pac-Man that chases you around. And in the settings, you can change how fast that Pac-Man moves to chases you up, which is kind of putting the artificial time pressure that you might experience in a race. You can set that to extremely slow, and so it just allows people to draw the best route, or you can set it extremely fast, so you're putting the pressure on. So it's use of time pressure makes it more of a game, and therefore, yeah, decision making under pressure. Afterwards, you can load up other people's routes, and I'm going to show examples of this. And it shows you the distance that they ran. You can see what other people are thinking. So it's really good for, when you've got a large number of people you can kind of see what other people are thinking, so you're not just drawing something on your own and you don't know what the other options are. It's also good practice at looking at maps. Where I live and where my local area is, I basically can't really get onto many maps at the moment due to the lockdown. And looking at maps is a skill, and training your eyes to look at maps. So it's a really good way of still doing part of the planning and the reading and the map interpretation part of orienteering without actually being able to go out and do the execution of the plan and route choice that you made. But looking at maps and continuing to look at maps is really important to do when you can't get out into the terrain in the forest or the streets and do it for yourself. And most important thing, I think it's used as a tool for further discussion and coaching and analysis between athletes and coaches. So I'm now going to go on to the sprint. So this may take ages to load, but we'll see what happens. So hopefully people can see on screen it's now loading the map and it says loading routes, be patient. I imagine this is what other people experienced. Okay, that's loaded pretty quickly. So it's all on screen? Everything clear? So you can go through. So you can go through. So my mouse should be highlighted. So you can go through single leg at a time. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, quite straightforward. Then you can click on people's names. So we load up next route. We can load up CD's route, same route. Okay. You can show all, and we're going to get a massive blob. Someone obviously clicked in the wrong place. That's what happens. The best option, and we can see there's 3 routes, right? First alley, second alley, or around the back, and third alley. The best way is analyze variants. And what this does is it groups people and then colors them into the same types of route. Okay, so we've got the blue route, middle red route, and the green route around the back. And then if we look on the right hand, there's a D route, and there's a tolerance. Okay, so the D route's just been because this person clicked over here, added an extra route, all of their own. And then it shows you the average distances. So 155 to 167, 159 to 166, 160 to 187. And this is the average, and this is really good when there's lots of people, because that hopefully will allow for people accidentally cutting the corner. Okay, I did say it is quite important that you click accurately, and as we see here, some people are going for olive green. Okay, so that their route would have to be longer. They'd have to come around this corner. That's why it is quite important. Having the average is really useful. Okay, so that's the route choice, and then you can simply click on the next leg around, and it's going to do exactly the same thing. So most people taking the same way to another leg. People are getting the points. Yeah. Okay. So really good tool. It gives you the distances. Now in sprint, it is relatively easy to equate distance to time. There's other things to consider, sort of obstacles and running speed, but generally it can be useful. The same thing can also be done on middle. Just going to load it in. Go back to this one. There's the option to click on the whole course. Although that's only at the start. You click C, it just clears everything and goes back. And hopefully the middle is running. Now, obviously in a middle, route choice isn't about everything. Okay, so there may be some routes, and obviously a long route choice is more important, but it's about navigation. But there is still a way we can use this tool for training. Okay, it's only loaded in me. That's fine. Maybe this is the one that got overloaded. So I've drawn my route. Here's my route to number 1. And we could have some other routes, so maybe someone went straight and it would show it was shorter. Okay, and unless we've got some actual results and splits from the terrain, we can't necessarily say what's quicker. But what we've been doing, firstly, I started using this with Edinburgh University's performance team, and then this rolled out to the GB Talent Squad, and now it's rolled out into some of the regions as well. So once a week I'm sending course rounds, and then the next week they get video and we talk about the analysis. Now in Forest, route choice is part of it, but actually your plan and what you're going to do. So I use an annotation tool. I record using Zoom or Teams or anything you want and make a video that then gets sent round or put onto YouTube. So you can use an annotation tool and you can talk about your route. Okay, so I could be recording screen right now, which literally we are. I could talk about, okay, I'm going to get compass bearing from the start, aim off left, and I know I'm going to hit the path. Okay, and this is something, as I said earlier, you can use it to talk with athletes and talk with coaches afterwards. You can have online Zoom session, you can do a recording, you can have one-on-ones, and you can discuss part of your legs. It's like, hey, then I'm going to run to the big spur. You know, you could use different colors to talk about features. And then you can go through and actually discuss not just where you're going, but what you're doing, how you're going to get there, talk about the different features. This is the part we really emphasize in the work that we do. So it's turning a route choice into a plan. So a plan has skills and techniques and strategies and tactics. What are you going to see? What techniques are you going to use to get there? Then people can discuss, people can draw on screen. You could do it in Zoom, as we've talked about, use the annotation tool and things like that. For Forest, it's really important that, you know, route is part of it, but actually talking about the leg and drawing on it. We've had this in some of the previous talks, you know, drawing their map and things like that from the previous talk. So that really sort of ties it in together. I realize this is very brief, but that's really all there is to it. You draw your route, and afterwards you can see other people's routes, and then if you want, you can, and I recommend it, you can spend time analyzing. So how do you actually set up a Running Wild course? Well, I could tell you, but it's easier that the person who invented it could tell you. So there's a YouTube video by Jan, and there's instructions at the very bottom of the main page that I sent you the link to earlier. So again, these links are going to be available. Don't need to rush to write them down. But essentially, it's used through the 3D World of O. You can draw a course on a map. Then you just save it as a Running Wild and it loads it in automatically. You get a link and you can send that link round, as I tried and failed to do earlier, to your participants. And then it's up to you how to use that. That's really all there is to it. It's not overly complicated. Take this tool off.
So, and we haven't had too many questions in because I think a lot of people, they've gone dark. A lot of people are having so much fun having a play and a go. And I think that's
I mean, it's quick. It's having a play is the best way to find out how to use it. So obviously, what it is, it's a free online tool, drawing and comparing route choices. I believe the most effective way of using it is in conjunction with coaching and discussions between your peers, between you and coaches, in small groups, as the whole club. You can have videos. There's lots of ways that you can do that. But don't just draw your route, discuss your route. Why did you go this way? What things are you looking for? Really dig down into the detail. Okay, if there's any questions, then.
What was the annotating tool?
So this is called Epic Pen. It's free. It's fantastic to use. I use it all the time. So there's pens with a whole bunch of colors here. So all the colors you need. It's got different sizes, so you can draw large. There's a highlighter available as well, so it can be slightly paler. A really great tool, Epic Pen. It's free. Just search for Epic Pen. I've also used the highlight tool. This is called mouse highlight, which is also really useful if you're doing presentations, because sometimes the mouse can be quite hard. I assume people can see the pink dot around my mouse. One thing I will say is, if you're doing something like I'm doing now, you need to make sure, I'm using a 2-screen setup, you need to make sure that you shared your screen. So I've shared my complete second screen and not just the PowerPoint. And normally when you share, you get the option of share Google Chrome, or share Root Gadget, or share screen 1, share screen 2. Share the screen that it's on, because the drawing happens on the screen and not onto the application. It's a very, very useful tool, and then you can just delete things and stuff like that and screenshot.
And look, I don't know why I've suddenly gone dark, but I think that's a signal that obviously the webinar's coming to a close, and the lights are turning off. But I have no idea why I'm dark. But I think, thank you for that, Mark. That was hugely interesting and useful, and I'm sure a lot of us will have a lot of fun going and having a look and a play at some of the stuff we've introduced this evening. So thanks to you, and thanks to all the other key presenters that have come up this evening. I've learned a lot. Sprintables, I never knew that was a phrase, so I'm definitely going to take that forward. But also I hope it's inspired and encouraged you, like it has me, to go away and do a bit of digging and do a bit of learning, inspired us to see how we can apply it to our own kind of clubs and coaches and areas. So yeah, we'll leave it there. Everything's been recorded, so you can watch it back. All the PowerPoint presentations and handouts will also be shared as well. Any questions, obviously, just get in touch. Anything else that you're having trouble with, and those that presented of it are more than happy to kind of guide and assist if there's anything else they can do. So thanks everyone for bearing with us. A lot of time, but a lot of content and a lot of fun. So I hope to see you again soon. Take care. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Natalie.